Thank you so much to Lisa Murphy of Houlihan Lawrence for sponsoring this video with Ryemarkable Mom Lee Woodruff. Hi guys, I'm Liz Woods and welcome to Ryemarkable Moms. Today I'm here with Lee Woodruff. Lee is the mom of 4 adult children. She used to be an ABC reporter. She's a New York Times best-selling author. She and her husband have started the Bob Woodruff Foundation, and now she owns her own business helping people with public speaking and communication skills. Thank you so much for being here today, Lee.
Thanks for having me.
So can you tell us a little timeline of your journey? You have so many accomplishments. Where did it all start?
Well, my journey was just sort of like anybody's journey. It's one thing built on another, and in joining my in my life to someone else's, you figure out how to bend and make compromises. And I had started at a marketing firm, and when I met my husband, was there as a senior vice president working with all different kinds of clients. We left and got married and moved to Beijing, China, and he was a lawyer. And he was actually teaching in those few years, and Tiananmen Square happened. So that was sort of the impetus that really changed our lives. He decided he wanted to be a journalist. He was translating for CBS and out on the square when the army rolled in, and that was the pivot point for his life. So that when we came back to the States and he kind of gave up a 6-figure salary for $12,000 a year for his first job as a journalist with a new baby, it was really clear to me that I was going to have to keep working. Mm-hmm. And that led to freelancing, to writing, to being a print journalist, to sort of moving every 2 years with his job. And then we can circle back to this, but in 2006, he was named the anchor of ABC World News. And then just 8 weeks later was really critically injured in Iraq. So that disrupted everything, just to say it mildly, but also out of the ashes comes some good things. And so this TV career that had sort of started for me in a consumer way, I worked for Good Morning America and then CBS This Morning, wrote a book about our family's journey, and then went out on the speaking circuit as well I'm actually sort of still on it, but all those things together kind of brought me to the moment where when you get to a certain age and you've done everything, you can teach.
So Lee, just to backtrack a little, can you share with us how you started the Bob Woodruff Foundation?
So Bob was in the hospital and in a coma for 36 days, and it really wasn't a great prognosis. And I was preparing for my plan B. What would I do? My kids were little, 14, 12, the twins were 5. So they'd just gotten to kindergarten at Osborne, and I'd been working, one of my big clients was Benefit Cosmetics at the time, and I was doing a lot of other little things. And I had finally said to myself, I'm going to give up the things that don't bring me total joy, and I'm going to be class mom in kindergarten, because I never got to do that for the other 2 kids. And of course, that's right. When the minute you start making plans, that's the old saying, that's when God laughs. So Bob was injured. I never got to be class mom. So I'll have to do that in my next life. Bob's brothers and I said to ourselves, if he does get better, looking at all of the military families, the really young men, mostly men, very few women at the time, that were cycling through the military hospital in Washington where Bob was. And we got so much ridiculous attention for his injury and what was happening to us as the anchor of World News, that we determined that if he did get better, we would create a foundation and do something to make sure that all veterans who had been injured in these wars had a fair shake when they came home at getting better, at getting jobs, at caring for their families if they were going to be incapacitated. So it's been 15 years. We've raised and given away more than $70 million in grants to organizations around the country. And I'm really, really proud of the work that we do. I used to be really involved every day, and it's wonderful to be at a place where we have an executive director and a small staff, but are really making a difference.
Wow, Lee, that's incredible work. Thank you so much for the service you're doing for our veterans and our entire country. How has the virus impacted your work at the foundation?
Coronavirus really has caused us, as it caused everybody in America, to really pivot quickly, because many of these families, injured veterans that have come back from the wars, are already operating with maybe less resources, caregivers stretched to the max, taking care of people. And one of the big issues right now, believe it or not, is hunger. So the great thing about being a granting organization is we can quickly turn the spigot of money to go where it's needed, without feeling like you're turning the Titanic. And we have pivoted many of our grants to immediate need for families who really need assistance in bill paying, hunger, some of the other issues that many other Americans sadly are facing.
Wow, so hunger is a major issue now. How is the money typically used?
The eligible criteria are those who have been injured. And initially we started just looking at brain injuries because that was the signature injury of the war, and it wasn't getting enough attention in the early days. But we broadened it, and oftentimes if somebody has had their legs blown off or a limb has lost a limb, they've probably suffered that concussive effect. And certainly their caregivers would be, eligible for things as well.
So now you have your own successful business and you're teaching people how to public speak?
It's getting ready for media training. It's giving presentations or speeches or just simply amplifying presence. Some of that work, I do a lot of work with Silicon Valley. I work with different celebrities. I work with nonprofits. But some of my favorite work is with women, particularly young women, because women have a harder time finding their voices. We are often more tentative, or when we're loud and proud, we're considered shrill, or words that rhyme with witch, where a man might be able to get away with that. I think we see a lot of that in the debates. And so it's helping women find their voice many times.
And how did you segue into this new career?
I did this at agencies, 35 years ago as a really young person. I have to laugh at my 26-year-old self at the time telling, the president of Audi cars or Porsche, what to say. And it wasn't me. I was part of a much broader, much more senior team. But that's where I first started to do this work. And then as a freelancer with various clients through the years, people would sometimes just ask me to help them prep. I got back into it. Actually, a friend sort of pulled me in who ran a PR agency and needed help with clients. And having been a journalist, so knowing what kinds of questions I could prepare someone for, whether it's a CEO who has, an IPO coming out or a new product launch. I just worked with CBS, for example, with all of their pharmacists on its flu season. So every local TV station wants to do a story on, cold and flu season and what the COVID overlay means for that. So it would just be preparing, those people to be ready to face a TV camera or a print journalist. And then a lot of people do presentations. So what are the things that work? What can you do when you have nerves or anxiety? And as a speaker, I can also speak to that. So I started doing it ad hoc with some of the other work that I did. And then it just was a slow word of mouth.
You have so many accomplishments. What do you consider your greatest achievement?
I think all of those accomplishments are just bullets on a CV, and I'm not going to say they don't mean anything to me. They do. The most important work I've ever done, honestly, is being a mother. And I know that sounds like a cheesy Hallmark card answer, defined to create a tear rolling down someone's cheek, but it really, really is. I am so proud of my children. Motherhood is the hardest job. It's the hardest, best job out there.
And how has coronavirus impacted motherhood for you?
Well, they were all out of the nest for a little bit. And my husband and I were sort of feeling like, okay, we can do this. This isn't so sad anymore. And then Corona hit and everybody came home. And probably like most people out there, it was a really sweet time in many ways. It was unexpected that older kids would be back and living in the house. And we worked out a rhythm to the whole thing. It was nice. And now I think we're all just anxious and waiting for the world to move on and know what the future holds. I think human beings are not good at not having end dates to solve for. So the not knowing piece is tough for us. So the election is hanging over here. COVID is still an unknown. And so I think we're all just extremely tired of this. I think my children would love to go back to their lives. Yeah.
Lee, you have so many successes and you do everything so confidently, and it seems like without ever being nervous. What makes Lee Woodruff nervous?
Well, I think that, having Bob almost not make it is the only scarier thing to me would be something happening to my children. So once you realize that you can survive something like that, that in some ways human beings are really built for resilience and survival, then I don't want to say I'm fearless, but it's the other things seem small in comparison. So you walk out on a stage and there's 500 people there that are strangers. You walk off the stage and you're still alive. It didn't kill you. Maybe you didn't do the best job that you could do, but no one's going to remember that the next day. And I think you sort of get in this mindset of, what's a real problem? What's the problem? And I remember in talking to anybody who's gone through a hard time, but coming back to Rye, Bob was living back at home, but he was still very much healing, and we weren't going out a lot, and showing up at the first soccer game for my kids, which felt like complete dislocation, and all of these wonderful people trying to say the right thing and wondering whether they should approach or not. We've all been there when someone's gone through a tough time. And I remember listening to a really well-meaning friend try to talk about, her problems. Like, so it was returning a shirt at Marshall's or something. And some days that's a problem. Honestly, I get that. But I just remember thinking, like, those aren't problems. I understand like what a real problem is, and not that anybody should go through something horrible to try to level set, how to set priorities, but it really does organize your priorities. We're all going to lose someone. We're all going to lose a parent eventually, or other people. And it's part of that trajectory that just, I think, the more you fix yourself in this giant firmament and realize that we all go through stuff, I think it's harder to take some of those things that we once thought were like, oh my gosh, this is going to stop me in my tracks. Mm-hmm. We're really built to be survivors, I think. And so it's about getting that perspective.
I love it. That's amazing. So what does the future hold for you? More books?
So that's the one downside of COVID. I thought I would be so motivated to write and have all this time. And I think for every mother I know out there, we all ended up shopping a little more, cooking a little more, running a little more household than we used to, especially those of us who had the empty nest. And I think just having more bodies around, I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I have not been the writer that I'd hoped to be. So I'm slowly working on stuff, but I spend so much time on this computer for work during the day that going to the computer to write doesn't exactly feel like, a relaxation right now. But hopefully another book will come.
Lee, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I mean, if I'm just talking to the women of Rye, and I know that your reach goes far beyond Rye, but I still feel like we live in a really special community with a lot of really wonderful people. And I think that in those moments where we're feeling anxious or unprepared or worried about what the future has in store, the moments that I can step outside and go to the incredible natural beauty that lives around our town, or grab a friend or go for a walk or go down to Playland and take that cruise along the beach. It's just those moments of being out in nature are really healing.
All right. Thank you so much, Lee, for your time today. I so appreciate you talking with me and sharing your views.
Well, thank you for, this is a kind of illustrious group to be considered one of the monthly Ryemarkable moms. So I'm the one that should thank you. I really feel privileged. Thanks for asking me.